Welcome to everybody, and thank you for joining us on such a short notice. Many of you were here just 24 hours ago for the Aloha ceremony as we celebrated accomplishment and contributions and transitions and said aloha and mahalo to our retirees. But we have gathered here not just faculty and staff and administrators. We have trustees who have joined us. We have former trustees who have joined us, along with special retired faculty members, past and current leaders of the PFA and the PAA, and special invitees. So welcome, and I'd like to now turn this over to our board chair, Mr. Ethan Abbott.
Thank you, Jim, and thank you also, as Jim mentioned, for coming to the chapel today on such short notice. I am thrilled to be here today to welcome all of you to a very historic and celebrated announcement. But before I do that, I'd like to introduce my fellow trustees that are here in the chapel this afternoon. First of all, Debbie Berger. Please stand. Mark Fukunaga, both chairs of the search. Greg Dickens, David Carey. We're going to excuse Duncan McNaughton from standing. He broke his ankle, so he... Wendy Crabb, Warren Luke, Kitty Woe, Mike Peach, Greg Yim, and we have a special trustee emeriti, Claire Johnson. As you know, at Punahou, we do not select new presidents very often. In fact, we've only had 3 presidents since World War II. As trustees, we have no presidential search template that we just dust off. With the announcement that is about to be made, I know we can all feel confident that we have continued the leadership in place to protect and enhance what is unique and best about Punahou School. This change in leadership represents continuity with our past as it becomes the foundation for our future. Our school will be in great hands moving forward into the next era. Please note, however, that this announcement today does not mean that we're putting Jim Scott out to pasture. We still have an entire year to work with Jim as he runs through the tape and across the finish line next summer. Jim's legacy is still being written. There are many events already being planned for the next school year to acknowledge Jim and all his accomplishments and contributions he has made to Punahou. 25 years ago, I was involved in the last Punahou presidential search when we selected Jim Scott in 1993 as our new president. My fellow trustees Warren Luke and Mike Peach were also involved in that search. Similar to that search in 1993, the present search committee has just completed an extremely thorough and thoughtful search process. At our trustee meeting just a few hours ago, we thanked both Mark Fukunaga and Debbie Berger for leading a tremendous and exhaustive search process. Please join me now in again thanking Mark and Debbie for a great job well done. And to discuss the elaborate process he has led and to announce our new president, I would like to now introduce the chair of the Presidential Search Committee, Mark Fukunaga.
Thank you, Ethan. Well, aloha and thank you for joining us today. I feel a bit like the scruffy warm-up band before the headline rock star, but I do hope to make this more than just killing time and give you some context for what you're about to hear. Before I get to the punchline, I'd like to summarize the process that brought us all to this very significant point in Punahou's history. As you know, roughly a year ago, Jim gave us the toughest job in the universe: find a worthy successor to him as head of Punahou. We first formed a search committee. As in past presidential searches, we selected trustees, but we wanted also to include full-time educators. We were lucky to have members from the junior school and academy faculties join us, and they provided extremely helpful and illuminating input. All 11 search committee members had deep ties to Punahou as alumni or parents or both. We then did a thorough process to find a search firm. We interviewed a number of them and talked with 25 search chairs who were references. That not only directed us to the right search firm, but also gave us valuable advice on best search practices. We selected Spencer Stewart, which had a great record of leading independent school searches and a very broad network, and engaged 3 of their consultants: Mary Gorman, the head of the education practice there, Christine Johnson, and Hypatia Kingsley. The search committee's initial task was to understand the opportunities and needs of Punahou and what that meant in terms of the qualities we wanted in the next head. For 6 weeks, we asked questions of the Punahou community and listened hard. As you know, we held 60 listening sessions over 6 days here on campus with staff, faculty, administrators, students, trustees, parents, and alumni. We also convened listening sessions in 13 cities, literally across the world, from Singapore to New York City. We got over 3,000 responses to our online survey of the wider Punahou community. We then synthesized all that feedback and, with the blessing of the full board of trustees, published the position description, launched the search, and held our breath. We were gratified when an exceptional pool of initial candidates showed interest. At this point, we took a piece of advice from a search chair with whom we had talked earlier in the year. To inform our search and figure out what was happening in the independent school world, Debbie Berger and I visited 19 schools and school heads in January. It was fascinating and cold and a bit crazy. We learned about going beyond diversity towards full inclusion at Groton, teaching foreign languages to kindergartners at Atlanta International, good governance practices at Lawrenceville, amazing robotics programs at Stuyvesant High School, self-directed education around Harkness tables at Phillips Exeter, the proper role of technology and data analytics at the epicenter of technology, the Bay Area, at the schools of Castilleja, College Preparatory, Menlo, Marin Academy, and San Francisco University High School. Character education, SEEL, at Riverdale Country Day, curriculum renewal at Westminster, down in Atlanta, doing without grades at St. Anne's in Brooklyn, and on and on. With all that we learned, the search committee then narrowed down the list of candidates through a succession of meetings. We next interviewed candidates in 3 rounds of meetings, the first in San Francisco and the second and third in Honolulu. We invited the finalists to meet with selected administrators, groups of junior school and academy faculty, and leaders of the Punahou Alumni Association and the Parent Faculty Association. We wanted to see how they interacted with the finalists and get their feedback. To those who participated, a big thank you. Your input was incredibly valuable in our decision-making. To those who did not have that opportunity, we hope you will understand that we had to keep the process confidential. All the finalists were in executive positions, and we risk having them drop out if their identities were to become public. We wrestled with that decision, but ultimately erred on the side of having the best candidates available. In addition to the interviews, we called numerous references for the candidates, had an investigative firm do background checks on both the candidates and spouses. Yeah, you wouldn't want to do this. And engaged a psychologist to conduct executive assessments of the finalists, which is a nice way of describing a 4-hour interrogation. In the end, we had a terrific set of finalists, all of whom were superbly qualified, but one stood out and was our unanimous choice to recommend to the board. As you can see, it was a thoughtful and thorough process, and it was a ton of work. So first, a very, very big mahalo to all the members of the search committee. Chase Mitsuda, Debbie Berger, Duncan McNaughton, Ethan Abbott, Greg Yim, Holly Greenwell, Jeff Watanabe, Kitty Woe, Mike Peach, and Wendy Crabb. In addition, Connie Lau, who chairs the transition committee, was an ex officio member who attended every meeting. It was truly a wonderful group of people who shared great chemistry and diversity of thought, and most important, who trusted and respected each other. We were supported and advised at every step by Mary, Christina, and Hypatia, our Spencer Stewart consultants. They were always responsible and extraordinarily helpful. And they tactfully limited our commitment to finding the best candidate from turning into obsessive stalking. Kathy Kawano-Ching did an amazing job running a couple of 3-ring circuses, scheduling and coordinating the many listening sessions and meetings throughout the process. And Chris Pading helped with the selection of the search firm and responding to inquiries. Jim, having given us such a difficult job, was very supportive of the committee's work and provided wise counsel throughout the process. Kathy Nelson devoted a great amount of time to coordinating candidate visits and handling multiple communications with the Punahou community. Also, a shout out to Audrey Seki, Sybil Saito, and my assistant Sherry Wagatsuma, who went beyond the call in a myriad of ways. I also want to specifically thank Debbie Berger, the vice chair, but really the co-chair of the search committee. She was just a great partner through a long process, whose thoughtful and perceptive insights, understanding of the Punahou community, and patient, unflappable style were indispensable. Thank you, Debbie. So, whom did we pick? He is Dr. Mike Latham, the Dean of the College and Vice President of Academic Affairs of Grinnell College. To explain why he was our unanimous choice, I'll go back to the opportunities and needs of Punahou. The big challenge for all of us is how to prepare our students for the world today and into the future. It is neither an easy nor predictable world. It is one where knowledge is becoming a commodity, accessed by, hey, Google. Disruption is the norm, with most future jobs yet to be invented. And we face deep social and political divides. Designing the right educational experience, which help our students develop enduring skills and resilience in ways that best use our finite resources of time and money, requires strategic leadership. Mike has demonstrated that ability at Grinnell and Fordham. He has led the development of an innovative, integrated humanities and science building at Grinnell, which will physically mix the departments and support interdisciplinary teaching. He worked with faculty and trustees to restructure the student research program, and now Grinnell ensures in a sustainable way that every single student has a substantial research experience there. He thinks strategically about the place of global education in a school. He spent a year teaching at Nanjing University in China and restructuring the global education at Grinnell by integrating disparate programs under a new Institute for Global Engagement, for which he secured significant donor support. Lastly, he has dealt with a lot of social and emotional issues among college students, and that experience has taught him the critical importance of social, emotional, and ethical learning early in life. As mentioned, Punahou is big. We also needed somebody who can oversee and manage a large organization. While Mike is officially Grinnell's academic leader, he really operates as the overall provost, as Grinnell's president told me, as he also oversees residential dorms, admissions, and communications, and leads fundraising efforts in parallel with the president. Previous to Grinnell, he was the dean of Fordham University's College at Rose Hills. That is the original and main undergraduate campus at Fordham in the Bronx with 4,000 students. One of Punahou's unique strengths is its location in Hawaii and its ability to leverage a rich educational experience from the Hawaiian host culture, our multicultural society, and the obvious importance of sustainability on an island. Of all the schools that Debbie and I visited, none had Punahou's depth of commitment and connection to the community. None had the sense of place of Punahou. We wanted somebody who not only understood that, but would take advantage of it in ways that benefited everyone involved, as Jim and all of you have done so well. Mike has been driven by a greater purpose in his career. Fordham, as you may know, is a Jesuit institution with a deep sense of social mission. At Grinnell, Mike was involved in various outreach efforts to the surrounding Iowa community, and his wife, Jen, is a tireless volunteer at social service agencies there. In that vein, when we asked Punahou constituents in the listening sessions whether it was necessary that the next head be from Punahou or have lived in Hawaii, the answer we heard was that it was not necessary, but it would be nice to have. That is the case with Mike. He was more than qualified even without a connection to Hawaii, but it's awfully nice that he grew up here and is a Punahou alumnus. His grandfather came to Hawaii as a submarine commander and never left. Mike's father was also in the Navy and moved his family here when Mike was 6. Mike attended public schools until entering Punahou in the 7th grade and graduated with the class of 1986. His grandmother, aunt, and sister are Punahou alumni as well. Moreover, Mike is a second-generation educator who personally appreciates how Punahou can work with public education to transform Hawaii. His mother was with the Hawaii Department of Education for many years as a counselor, curriculum specialist, and elementary school principal in Nanakuli. That clearly had a big impact on him. Mike himself taught summer school at Aiea High School. Finally, while all of us in the Punahou community care deeply about its future, we don't necessarily think in the same way, which is good. There are always different viewpoints, and effective leadership helps all find a common direction and move forward. As you will find, Mike is a keen listener and a respectful and thoughtful collaborator. When Mike became the dean of the college at Grinnell, he was the first outsider in that position ever. the faculty were not only worried, but somewhat suspicious of his ability to get Grinnell. Mike spent a summer at Starbucks, meeting one-on-one with all the faculty to listen and learn. Now, if you ask a member of the Grinnell faculty, as I did, they'll say, "My God, I don't know what we would do without him." Perhaps what informs Mike is his study of history, which is much about the success and failure of cultures and institutions over time. His interest in history began at Punahou, continued at Pomona College, where he graduated summa cum laude, and then culminated with a Ph.D. at UCLA. He is the author of 2 noteworthy books and many articles on the history of American foreign policy. I suspect he looks through that long lens of history and culture in how he does his work, and that imbues his actions with sensitivity, humility, and insight. For all those reasons, the board today voted unanimously to approve Mike as the next head of Punahou. I am delighted to introduce to you Mike Latham.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mark, that was a very generous introduction. Thank you. I want to begin on a note of gratitude. I want to begin by thanking Jim Scott for the time that he took to meet with me during my visits here, the time that he took away from his own commitments and his schedule to talk about his experience. I'd like to thank Ethan for his leadership and friendship. I'd like to thank Mark and Debbie and the entire search committee. As you heard Mark saying, the process of a search like this can be a very demanding one. The 4-hour intellectual interrogation with the psychologist certainly comes to mind. But I have to say, at each turn, at each step in the process, the search committee was so friendly, so welcoming, so warm, that I had this feeling that I really was returning to this community which I loved and cared so much about. And that meant a great deal to me. I'd like to thank all of you for coming as well to what must have felt like a fairly mysterious meeting. But I'm really honored to see you here. The opportunity to return home and to give back to Punahou, to stand with you in this chapel, is a deeply inspiring one to me. I have a profound sense of gratitude to a community that had such a powerful and transformative impact upon me. And I especially recall the teachers who enriched my experience during my years here at Punahou. I recall taking 8th grade science with Mr. Harold Lee, who I see is joined us here this morning today. I recall very clearly struggling with the textbook, trying to work my way through this, and I just couldn't keep track of all the concepts, and more importantly, I couldn't see how they fit together. And I finally went upstairs, and I went to his office in Bishop Hall, and I said, "Mr. Lee, I'm having a tough time with this." And he said, "Mike, if you really want to understand this, you need to make an outline of the chapter and explain the concepts to yourself in your own words." Well, that sounded interesting. I'd never done that before, and I tried, and what do you know, it actually worked. And, that was a skill that I not only used in the rest of my time in 8th grade, but really throughout the academy, on into college, and throughout the completion of my Ph.D., and it's something I still do today. It's interesting, cognitive psychologists now tell us that this process of explaining concepts to yourself or to others is far more effective than sort of mass repetition and memorization. Mr. Lee knew that 35 years ago, and that lesson has stayed with me ever since. I can recall taking speech as a freshman, first year in the academy with Darlene Kishimoto. And I think Darlene is probably here as well. There she is. I can remember being in a room full of very nervous ninth graders. Because, you know, to embarrass yourself in front of your classmates in speech was probably a fate worse than death. But Ms. Kishimoto was so encouraging, so supportive, that every student gained the confidence to do this. And even more, looking back at this as a teacher myself, she built a community within that classroom so that each of us was pulling for the other students in the room. That was a tremendous accomplishment, and I think all of us benefited so strongly from that, and so I remain very grateful to you for that. I remember taking American history with Jay Seidenstein, and Jay unfortunately isn't here today, but I can recall very clearly the impact he had on me. Every class in Jay's course was built around an interpretive question or a problem. An open-ended problem, and you had to arrive at class having thought about this, whether you were discussing the origins of the American Revolution, or anti-slavery and the beginnings of the Civil War, or the legacy of the Civil Rights Movement, and you had to come prepared to make your case and to explain why you believed what you believed. And that was tremendously exciting because history was then no longer a static collection of names and facts and dates that you might memorize, but instead became a field of competing interpretations about the past that you could contribute to and that had bearing on the present. And that was intellectually very exciting and had a powerful impact as I myself eventually became a historian. And in addition to the time that I spent in Punahou classrooms, athletics was a large part of my experience too. Running track and cross country here every year that I was at Punahou, with the good fortune to be coached by Ralph Dykes and Michael Georgi, both of whom I think are with us as well. I've seen Michael, and I hope Ralph is in the room too. They had a very powerful impact upon me because coaching is a form of teaching and a really transformative one. The discipline, the dedication, and teamwork that I learned there spilled over into the rest of my life, and I discovered reservoirs of strength and endurance that I really didn't know I possessed. And that too has stayed with me. Teachers like these, I think, are at the heart of the transformative education that Punahou delivers, and I am very grateful to them and to all of Punahou's dedicated faculty. The work that you do leaves me in awe. I think in many respects, the education I had at Punahou prepared me very well for college. There was no question that I developed a set of intellectual abilities and skills that I needed. I learned how to think critically. I learned how to write effectively. I learned how to deliver a compelling argument. Those skills served me well there and really through the rest of my experience. But something deeper happened at Punahou, something that I think is really kind of at the heart of the enterprise. Sitting in Punahou's classrooms, talking with my classmates, learning from my teachers, running in track meets, spending time sitting here in this chapel, I began to realize that the really important challenge, the most important challenge that I faced, and that I think every Punahou student faces, is not just to figure out what I was good at. The real challenge was to figure out what I cared about, what mattered to me, what I might be willing to commit myself to. And that required a process of reflection and discernment and some serious soul searching. And that unfolded over time. But the answer to that question for me, a question which I think really was rooted here, was education. That was ultimately what I decided would really be where I wanted to commit myself. As Mark mentioned, right after college, I taught a summer school course at Aiea High School, and I loved it. I loved being in the classroom. I loved spending time with students. I loved helping them discover abilities or talents they didn't know they possessed. I loved watching them mature. I liked watching them argue with each other. I liked watching them argue with me. It was fascinating, and I discovered that I loved teaching and wanted teaching and learning to be at the heart of my work. That inspiration, combined with my love of history, took me to UCLA to complete a doctorate, and from there I spent 18 years at Fordham University in the Bronx, 13 of them as a teacher, spending time at an institution which had a deep commitment to social justice and responsibility, and then 5 more as the dean of the college before moving to the Midwest to become the vice president for academic affairs at Grinnell College. Now, some of you may know that Grinnell was founded by Congregationalist missionaries in the middle of the 19th century, in 1846, only a handful of years after Punahou. It was really the same crowd. It was the same group of guys. The only difference was the Punahou group was smart enough to keep going west, while the Iowa people stopped in the middle of the plains on the prairie. And every winter I think about that, and I think if only they had kept going. But they didn't, so I will. But Grinnell, like Punahou, had this deep commitment to social responsibility and ethics, and that too was transformative. The Punahou that I graduated from in 1986 was already a truly outstanding institution. It had a talented and dedicated faculty, many brilliant students, and skilled leadership. Another school might have been content to stand pat with that record, to rest on its laurels, to just mind the store. And the message for a person leading such an institution might be, just keep it going. Don't blow it. But what's remarkable, I think, and what's really exciting and inspiring, is the way that Punahou has continued to innovate and evolve since then. Under Jim Scott's visionary leadership, Punahou has fulfilled its mission by moving in new and compelling ways. I think here about the school's commitment to inclusion and to access, to a broader public mission that brings underrepresented groups of students into the heart of the school. I think about personalized learning and the school's commitment to the dignity and the experience of every child. I think about the creative analysis of the relationship between teaching and space, the kind of pedagogy that is now unfolding in new learning environments in Omidyar and Kwasasa and Case. In many respects, these are areas in which I have also worked in higher education, both as a college teacher and as an administrator. But I am increasingly convinced that the real potential for innovation is here at the K-12 level. Whether we're talking about social, emotional, and ethical learning, building resilience and giving students a moral center, or teaching students how to learn to become lifelong learners, or thinking about intercultural education and understanding. We do our best at the college level with these, but the place to really move the needle, starting with kindergarten, is at an institution like this one. It's at a school like Punahou with this kind of a mission. Punahou, I believe, is now positioned to be and is continuing to grow as a national thought leader on these issues in such a way that it will enable it to shape the future of education itself. And that is especially inspiring. So how might we think together about Punahou's future? What goals might we begin to define? I'll offer a few initial perspectives here, and I do so with humility, with great humility, noting that these will only be framed through collaborative discussion and that many of them are already well underway. I'll offer three large themes, each of them building on the framework that Jim, the administrative leadership team, and the faculty and the principals have created. First, of course, is to promote innovative, inquiry-led teaching and learning across the school. To think creatively about how we define overall learning objectives and plan for an integrated K-12 experience for every student, to enhance connectivity between our junior school and the academy. To pursue excellence by balancing innovation with coherence so that the whole is always greater than the sum of the parts. To define goals for information literacy, for reimagining learning environments, for social and emotional learning, and in my own field of global education and engagement. And as a part of this, an integral part of this, to continue Punahou's commitment to faculty development, recruitment, and retention. Second, I would say that we must continue to affirm and strengthen Punahou's commitment to social responsibility and to service. Punahou's sense of place in Hawaii, Punahou's grounding in Hawaii's culture, traditions, and history is a force for distinctive excellence. It's one of the things that sets us apart and makes us truly superior. To enhance our commitment to diversity and inclusion for the benefit of all students, of every student that attends the school, to embed community-based learning and social responsibility into our curriculum, and to seek further opportunities and partnerships with public education for mutual benefit. These, it seems to me, can be cornerstones of Punahou's work in the future. Finally, I would say that the work continues to develop planning and resources to sustain Punahou's mission, to enhance our capacity for institutional research and data and decision-making, to continue thoughtful financial planning related to questions of cost and affordability, and perhaps equally important going forward, to engage thousands of Punahou's alumni and friends in advancing the school's mission. Of course, this is all to be explored and developed over time in collaborative discussion as we define priorities together and to plan. And the first step for me, as an incoming leader of the school, must be to listen and to learn from you all, to learn from this community. I am eager to spend time in Punahou classrooms. I'm eager to visit Punahou classrooms, to talk with teachers, with staff, with students from across the entire school. Tomorrow morning, I'll start that process with Punahou's youngest students in kindergarten. And I'm looking forward to working with the Transition Committee of the Board of Trustees, with Jim Scott, with our principals, Emily and Paris, with the administrative leadership, and with faculty and staff over the course of the coming year. Finally, I'll conclude on a personal note. This is a source of great excitement not only for me, but also for my family. Over the past 25 years, my wife Jennifer has journeyed with me from Southern California to New York, to Iowa, and now across the Pacific. She is eager to make Punahou her home as well. Our two daughters, Miley and Anya, 13 and 15 years old, look forward to joining this community too. And to be here with you, to give back to Punahou, is a great joy for me, and I look forward to our future together. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike, for sharing with us your deep commitment to Punahou and for giving us an early glimpse of how you'll be thinking about your transition to K-12 education and your return to both Hawaii and to the world-class institution that has continued to evolve and grow under Jim's leadership. Wow. Our president-elect. This is one of those milestone moments when the conceptual becomes the real. Until now, with all the long meetings, deep discussions, and travel and planes, trains, automobiles, and motels with Mark, the search was an intellectual as well as physical challenge. Now, in this moment, it becomes an emotional challenge as well. I'm filled with deep appreciation of Jim's vision and enormous gratitude for his hard work and fortitude. I also feel tremendous confidence in the depth and leadership of the team that you all represent. And of course, now I also feel great excitement to see where Mark will lead us all. We heard a little bit that Mike ran cross-country and track while he is with Punahou. And given that both our women's and men's teams just won states, I can't resist the analogy. Anyone who has ever run a relay knows the race is often won in the handoff. And this year, our men ran the 4x400 in just under 3 minutes and 20 seconds. Fortunately, we're going to have a bit more time to get this handoff right. So over the course of the next school year, we'll have ample opportunity to express our deep appreciation to Dr. Scott while we plan to warmly welcome the Lathams to our community. Transitions such as this don't happen every day around here, and they never happen successfully without patience, collaboration, and a lot of hard work. We want to thank you in advance for that and to reassure you that we'll be working hard alongside you throughout the process. To that end, the trustees have already begun thinking about the official transition. Indeed, as the work of the Presidential Search Committee comes to a close, a new Presidential Transition Committee has been established under the leadership of Trustee Connie Lau. In addition to Connie, it's comprised of Mark Fukunaga as its vice chair. He's a glutton for punishment. Board Chair Ethan Abbott, David Carey, Wendy Crabb, Warren Luke, Kitty Woe, Greg Yim, and myself. This committee will work with both President Scott and President-elect Latham and with you to ensure a smooth transition over the coming months. Now, briefly, before we move on, there's someone else that I would like to acknowledge in this pivotal moment. That's Presidential Search Committee Chair Mark Fukunaga. It is thanks to his tireless pursuit of an inclusive and thorough search process that we were able to benefit from the collective wisdom of the Punahou community. Without going into too much detail, and you won't be surprised to hear this being of Punahou, I am told that we have set an entirely new standard in school leadership searches, one that we can be very proud of. Thank you, Mark. Now I'd like to invite Chaplain Medeiros to close this very special afternoon together, after which the trustees invite you to join us outside for a reception in the courtyard.
Whew. Do you need to breathe? I need to breathe. Breathe in this moment. Breathe in the common experience that we're having, though we will be processing this moment in our own unique ways. So breathe. Breathe in the beauty of the light streaming through the stained glass. Take a moment to acknowledge our close proximity in this chapel to the ever-renewing spring, the waters of Punahou, ever-renewing. These waters that have been here before any of us, and these waters that will be here long after we're gone. But for this moment, we are here together, and I believe that is not an accident. So before I offer a prayer, I humbly invite us all to think not only of what it took for Dr. Latham to be selected as our next president and what he brings to us, but flip that for a moment and consider what it will take from each of us to create the conditions under which he might successfully lead. Epule kako, will you join me in prayer? Keakua, spirit of grace and creativity, we meet here in this moment of in-between, giving thanks for Jim, acknowledging the first of many occasions to honor his legacy and his connection with us and with this place, and giving great thanks for a new day dawning, for possibilities and opportunities, for the mysterious and the unknown, even the anxiety and the full range of emotions. We give thanks for those whose deep commitment and thoughtful work have brought us to this moment. And we give thanks for Mike Latham and Jen and Miley and Anya, recognizing that Mike is stepping out in faith, acknowledging that he honors us by offering his gifts, experience, and spirit to lead us and partner with us in the exquisite enterprise of the educational journey here at the waters of Punahou. we celebrate being part of a rhythm where endings are new beginnings, and where our evolving community strives to live out the meaning of aloha, the hellos, the goodbyes, and especially the love. Amen. Let's have refreshments.